I'd like to call the meeting of the Mass Transit Commission to order Wednesday, July 12th. You obviously have the roll.
Yep.
Do I have a motion to approve the minutes from June 14th?
I'll move.
I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Seconded.
Seconded by Jillian. Any corrections, changes, additions to the minutes? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
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 Okay, the minutes are approved. Not seeing.
It's Austin.
Yeah, Austin. Are you here to make an appearance?
No, I'm just a member of the public, attending the meeting, seeing
Okay.
what the discussion is.
Okay,
I might ask a question if there's an open question period, but mostly just watching.
This is only time to.
This is actually the time to ask questions, and we just listen and we'll do our best to respond to the question in the context of the meeting. So what's your question?
Nothing explicitly right now, just I might have a question if depending on what the discussion yields.
Okay, so just so you're aware, we're once the meeting starts, we're bound to stick with the agenda, and we can't answer questions directly from the public during the meeting.
Okay,
So you're certainly
fantastic.
welcome to send a question after the meeting if you hear something you have a question about.
All right, fantastic. That'll work well enough for me.
Okay, terrific, thank you. So we'll close the appearance section and move to unfinished business. Number 5A, discussion of the Madison Metro route and stops. So before we dive into any of the rest of this tonight, I did watch last month's meeting. Thank you to all of you for wading through with the Madison Metro head to getting some more answers from Madison Metro. I guess the one thing that I would want to say going into this meeting, and as we continue, not just this meeting, but in other meetings, is one of my favorite phrases, which is that we shouldn't let the perfect be the enemy of the good. Right? I mean, this is to say that we're talking about outsourcing a service. And we're outsourcing it with Monona Transit as well. And we, as we all know from our experience with Monona Express and Monona Lyft, it's not perfect. And I don't think, I just want to manage everyone's expectations that, you know, we don't have the ability to financially or otherwise to create a perfect system, right? So I think as we talk about the criteria and as we continue to talk about all of that, you know, and particularly around the criteria, I think we just need to think about the fact that, you know, we can't design perfect because it's not our buses, you know. And nor is the Express, nor do we have an endless amount of money to spend on transit. So with that, again, we'll start with 5A, the discussion on the Madison Metro route and stops. I know one thing that I'm particularly stuck on is that no matter what happens, one of the ways in which I think the system needs to be improved is that it's absolutely critical that we have adequate coverage on our main thoroughfares, which is to say Broadway and Monona Drive. Because as chair of the Plan Commission, I can tell you that, you know, and you all know this, the density in both of those streets is going to increase, both in terms of commercial activity and in terms of residential density. And I think that one of the things that's disappointing to me as I look at those routes is that there doesn't seem to be that many stops on either the H or I guess what the L, I guess maybe they use the letters for those two. But it to me, you know, in terms of negotiating, it seems to me that having a few more stops in there
Thank you.
would be valuable. Because, you know, as it rolls up Monona Drive, as L rolls up Monona Drive, I mean, as I said, you know, we have developments already going in. And one of the things that every single developer is talking to us about is public transit. And that, you know, those developments are not going to happen in the interior of Monona. They're going to happen on our main thoroughfares because, you know, we're zoned that way. So I just posit that as an aside that we may want to go back to as it relates to.
I will say for the L and the H.
Yeah.
When I was talking, there's no stops that shows on here, but they said once we make the fully decision to go with Metro, they would have a conversation. I assume with me or somebody, the transit commission, and figure out where to put those stops on
Okay,
H and L.
Okay.
For right now, they don't want to put them in there yet until they
okay,
get the okay, but they, you know, there will be stops.
okay,
And that'll be something we'll have to figure out too.
okay. That's encouraging to hear.
Yes. So yeah, they will be stopping.
Okay. And obviously going north, thinking about San Damiano and beyond as well.
Yeah.
You know, again, that's gonna be a priority. So, so beyond that, with C3, are we at a place where we feel like the revised route?
This is an old one, so this is what we
Right.
show to the public, so I think we don't have the one that we talked about going here to Pheasant Hill. Over and then down up Nichols. And then.
Right, we had it at last month's meeting, we had a map of it, but
Yeah.
but the revised route potentially internally
Yes.
was that Addie actually had her heat maps around. Was Owen to Pheasant Hill to Nickel to Winnequa and up Dean. And then downtown,
However, there was a lot of discussion that I want to bring back up about whether down in the south part on that alternate route, we're going Broadway to Monona Drive that goes past the grocery stores, or if we're going up Femrite to Monona Drive.
Yeah, we. So you want to go right here, I don't know if you guys see it, you just want to go instead of turning here. If we save the C route with the one loop system. You're talking about going down here and out, is that what you're saying?
Yeah, because we had a lot of comments about, you know, just to your earlier point, Nancy, that one of the main commerce centers in Monona is being circumscribed by the C3 route.
right,
And that the walk from, you know, for a lot of people, the walk to get to the bus from the the grocery store would be prohibitively far.
right. So that was actually one of the other things that I wanted, just as a point, as another data point. And, you know, is to keep in mind that, and this goes back to my previous comment about not letting perfect being the enemy of the good. You know, just remember that particularly as it relates to seniors or really anyone, you know, the seniors do have other stopping buses. They don't just rely on the lift, they have.
There's RSVP, there's RSVP, there are different sources that.
Yeah, there's RSVP, and then this is the latest senior newsletter in case you don't get it. But you know, they have transit solutions that they're offered by Dane County and as well. And like, for instance, you know, every Monday, there's a bus that goes to Hy-Vee, Goodwill and Aldi's. On Tuesday, it's Woodman's East and Walmart. On Wednesday, it's Pick and Save. Which is actually, not Pick and Save, but,
That's the Metro.
but Madison, but.
Metro Market.
Metro Market, Willie Street North and Lakeview Library. On Thursday, it's Festival of Foods in Willie Street East. On Friday, it's Target, Michael's, Hobby Lobby, which is no longer obviously. But Hobby Lobby over, I think on East, and yeah, over at East Town, and Target over at East Town. So that's just the, you know, and that's free. So. And there's also RSVP, so just, and both of those are posted on the website and have been here and available to see, you know, to seniors. But to your point, I think that we were weighing the. You know, the density of Femrite Drive. Which is already fairly high. Because there's a lot of multi-story. Multifamily facilities, versus Broadway, but what, you know, what do other people think about? About that, and H runs every half hour. As opposed to C, which would run every hour.
What if
C3.
it routed along Femrite going this way and then back on Broadway that way? I know they want to go to the
This is it.
Dutch Mill, but
This is one right here we're looking at is the one-way loop, just a one loop,
Yeah,
not the two-way loop there.
but
Right.
still,
So if it's a one loop, you couldn't do it.
you couldn't do that?
no.
Oh, I see.
So, and they're coming down Stoughton Road specifically because that's the only way they can get back. And have the 20 minutes to go through Monona.
Yeah.
So, because one of the things that I asked was, you know, why, if you don't stop on Stoughton Road, why are you going all the way over there? And I remember very specifically getting that answer. That they need to be able to move down Stoughton swiftly in order to have the time to get back through.
Okay.
So the question is, if they want to cross on Broadway instead to H, then you'd have the H route and the C route running back to back. You'd be doubling up for that, at least the entry section of Monona.
But I can't see H above that, but it seems like it covers a different part of town.
H is goes
I
up-
mean, if you live
and
in,
then
if you live in this part of town, you would want the C route. The H route wouldn't service you, right?
Right, but what I'm saying is that. And
Can you
sorry.
guys see what they're pointing to right now or not?
Yeah, I don't think you see it, but I'll spell out what I'm pointing to is I'm saying if they went down Stoughton Road and went across on Broadway, I'm finding it hard to imagine that the Metro would find it acceptable or that the H bus, even though it goes differently later on, that the H bus and the C3 would run concurrently, basically bumper to bumper every hour. Until it gets to Owen. And then the question also becomes, if there isn't anything on Femrite, does that mean that the people that live on Femrite would have to walk down, well, they'd either have to walk to stop 4 conceivably or you know, or up to a stop that would be here. If you lived on Femrite, or you'd have to walk down to Broadway in order to, are you guys following me, even though you can't see me pointing?
Yeah, my guess is that I think it makes sense to place the C3 on Femrite where there's more housing density versus
Shopping.
shopping, mostly because the logistics, if you were to use the C3 to go to the grocery store, you'd have to do, and it's only one direction. You'd have to run the whole route to get back to where you live.
Right,
And the logistics of that, I can't imagine anyone doing that. The necessity seems to be mostly among senior populations, and as you mentioned, there are multiple other means for seniors to get rides during the day, whether it's paratransit or RSVP or something else. And I'm not sure it's worth changing the route to go on Broadway, that one section of Broadway where there's not as much housing density. You know, west of Monona Drive, there's more housing density, but then that overlaps with the H,
right.
which runs more frequently anyway. So it seems like if someone was going to the grocery, they would use the H rather than the C3, which runs less often and also is only one direction.
Right. What do you think, Addie? Sorry, you're on mute.
You for reminding me. The other consideration is, so I've heard like 3 considerations that we've kind of, or 2 considerations. I want to add a third one. You know, one is the question of, are we designing a route to get the most access to where people live? Or are we designing a route that provides coverage through the major transit corridors of our community? Right, so those are kind of 2. And then the third I want to bring up as well is employment. And that, you know, people are going to be coming into Monona to work, and certainly being able to get to into our town on, or into the city on H, get to the bus or get to the grocery store, not a big deal. The other things along that stretch of Broadway though are the UW Clinic. We get access to the Dean St. Mary's at about 0.1 on the map, but there's the UW Clinic. There is more housing going to be going in there if that development has been green lighted. I haven't really heard an update lately. So that's kind of the third thing that I'm thinking about, because I'm trying to like say what are the principles that are important and how do we build a route that's aligned with those principles. So I want to add this employment principle in there as well.
Right, so I think that speaks to the whole issue of what are you gonna make as the criteria for selection, and it seems to me that a primary piece of criteria for us to consider, although, you know, it's kind of taking it out of turn, would be access, right? What we're talking about is access, and that, and so I think that the access question is from it's how, you know, it has to be convenient to where people live. I think would take, for me anyway, would take priority over, because people have said to us, we won't walk. I mean, if you may recall in the public information meetings, there were a lot of people that said, oh, well, if somebody wants the bus, they can just walk up to Monona Drive, but we know that's not the case. In some cases they might, but they won't, which is to say, if people, you know, and it doesn't matter what sport it is, it doesn't matter if you're a cyclist or a paddler or whatever, if the you know, the path to get there is too cumbersome, you just don't go. There has to be a convenience there, right? So I think to me, people being able to have access in terms of closer to where they live, as well as access in terms of the time of day, and the number of days of the week, because that's the other thing that we know is lacking in our current, right? That there are people that don't work immediately downtown, or there are people that don't work 8 to 5, and do want to use the bus other times of day and on weekends. So for just as a point of information, the number 1 stop on this map that's identified as number 1 is the stop that's to serve the development that's going in at the Chiefs right now. Addie, that you just referenced, and they put it there specifically because Madison Metro said that would not be a good place to stop on Broadway. Because of the volume of traffic at that intersection of Stoughton Road and Dutch Mill, that's a crazy intersection.
Yeah.
So they said that they would not want to stop on that end of Broadway on Broadway. Instead, they would like people from that development to cross the street and get off of the main drag to pick up the bus. So that's one of the reasons why they were advocating for the FemRide route.
Mm.
So I guess my second question is, if we leave FemRide for the moment, where were we as of last week as it relates to the new route that we were thinking about, which is to say Owen to Pheasant to Nichols to Winnequa to Dean? Do we feel like that option is a better option than what we've got on the board right now?
When we talked about it last month.
Yeah,
Yeah, I think we.
I'll be really honest, I don't remember what is the underlying driver for making that route change. Does anybody know, was it a concern from Metro? Was it a intersection at 0.6 of the map? Was it opposition
No,
from
it
people on
was-
Owen Road?
it was primarily the safety issue. And yeah, it was primarily the safety issue because our main thoroughfares are Nichols and Dean. And our main senior population is at the top of Owen. And so we thought, from a safety standpoint, primarily for resident, not for the bus drive, not for the bus riders, but for the rest of the community that was concerned about big buses going through residential streets that don't have sidewalks. That if we could stick to the streets that have sidewalks and still service where the seniors were, most of the seniors are. And for, also by turning at St. Stephen's, you would, conceivably be picking people up at Heritage to go, or for that matter, Monona Hills to go, to St. Stephen's, not only for church, but also for voting. So if somebody just needed to catch a ride to go vote, they could, that's St. Stephen's, and then going over to Nichols already has sidewalks. Dean obviously already has sidewalks, so the only stretch that doesn't have sidewalks in that route at this point is a tiny little bit on the south side of the St. Stephen's lawn,
Right,
right?
yeah,
And Winnequa Road.
Yeah.
And it wouldn't be that expensive to put a sidewalk on the east side of Winnequa Road.
and there was issues with bus number 7, the 7 area. Because of that turn going up the hill with the schools, crosswalk in the morning. It's in that area.
Yeah.
So that was concern, I mean, Metro can do it, but that was one of their concerns, is that area populated with those kids walking. Right there, so they preferred the sidewalk down Nichols. I'm thinking,
And I think Doug determined a few months ago when he did the 3/4 of a mile,
yeah,
our concern, it has to be within 3/4 of a mile, so for everybody, and he figured out that either route would work from the standpoint of the 3/4 of a mile.
yeah, so he mapped, he basically did this big circle and everything except for last street on Pocahontas or something like that. The last street in the whole on that Belle Isle is the only street technically that wasn't covered either way, but Metro said they would pick it up if they called.
Question I got was about that point that it says 8
Uh-huh,
and the bus turning onto Winnequa. If there was enough room to actually get in there, if there's a car stopped at the stop sign.
Yes. Yes, so they ran the route.
they run the route.
So they said that was fine, but, because that was a question I had. If they're-
Oh, okay,
So
Yeah.
they were fine with that.
they're okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
and we rode the routes with them.
Yeah.
Okay.
Transit Christian members rode the routes with them.
Yeah.
So again, I guess the question is the alternate route that we're suggesting, the Owen to Pheasant Hill to Nichols down to, through the city center, cross on Winnequa and up to Dean. If we were gonna go with Madison Metro, would that be the preferred route? And then the question becomes, if that's the preferred route, where would you want the stops to be? I'm assuming that we would want the stop that exists there that's identified as number 5.
Yeah.
And on Owen. And then we might want another stop. I don't know which one of. I don't know if, is this Pheasant
Probably,
Hill?
Yeah, this would be Pheasant Hill.
This is Pheasant Hill?
Yeah,
yeah,
So,
probably just before turning left onto Pheasant Hill.
yeah,
right, so just before you turn left onto Pheasant Hill, there would be another stop here,
yeah,
right?
yeah,
So just below the W, if you will, because that's Pheasant, or just below, below the E, I should say, on the map. So if you guys can see that. That's, okay, so, and then we go straight across in Pheasant Hill, maybe another stop on
Nichols.
Nichols here,
Yeah.
right?
Where is here? Sorry.
On the corner of, I was just getting confirmation here, don't worry, I'm trying. It would be on the corner of Nichols and Pheasant Hill. So before you take the turn to go down to the city center.
Okay,
Right.
okay, yeah.
And then there would be another stop at the city center. Which is more or less 7,
Right,
and then a stop 8. And then the 9 and the 11, or 9, 10, 11 would still work. As well as 12 and 13, right?
yeah,
The one thing I guess I'll mention is that when it comes to a sidewalk on Winnequa,
Uh-huh.
when you say cheap, it's still gonna be 200,000-300,000, something like that.
yeah, it's investment to $300.
And it's probably one of, like you said, Nancy, it's a very controversial thing.
To put a sidewalk in.
Yeah. It's not simple.
I mean, that, they said the engineers, well, we had people look at it, it's not as far as putting it in, it's not slope. is
No,
fine.
engineering wise, it can be done.
You're talking
Just
about like the residents.
Public opposition, yeah.
We've been through this. We've already passed a bike and ped plan, and Winnequa Road is one of the top priorities, that bike and ped plan. So I'm not saying it's not gonna be without controversy, but that section of Winnequa is one of the higher priorities in that bike and ped plan. And I don't know, unless the council had a wholesale personality change, I'm not envisioning that we wouldn't continue to work on that plan.
I think I understand what you're saying. I'm just saying that we have to be prepared for what people are gonna say.
Sure.
In response to this.
Sure, of course.
Yeah. I know the mayor during her re-election campaign brought that, it was one of her issues, she
Right,
put in her campaign stuff, so.
right.
Do what?
To talk about sidewalks from there.
Oh,
There was also a lot of support in the survey replies for sidewalks, not even related to this issue, but just like generally, it seemed like people really, really want sidewalks.
Yes.
Yeah, and I think I mean, my impression is that despite the opposition that existed on the Winnequa Road sections that were done, the result has been very positively received. People are using it a lot. The cyclists that I've talked to feel a lot better on it. I mean, yeah. Yeah. No more Winnequa kiss, right? Isn't that what the cyclists used to call the bump outs?
Yes, yes, no more. Oh my God, I'm about to merge into traffic and here comes someone walking a dog.
Yeah, yeah. So, and for that matter, it's like Rick with you, it's like you were, as it relates to your street. I
Oh,
mean, I think
McKenna.
that McKenna, I mean, I think people were against
Well,
McKenna too, but now that
yeah.
it's done, people appreciate it.
I agree with you there. That meant taking up a parking lane. And
But,
I don't know if we even have that on Winnequa.
well, that's up to the engineers and it's not up to us. So if we feel like this is the best route, I wouldn't worry about the sidewalk is my point.
Well, I don't want to go in blind. I mean, I think there will be lots of considerations with trees, what have you.
Right.
You're talking about taking down some older trees as well.
Right.
So it's not a simple matter. So I'm just saying that we need to understand what the complications might be.
Yeah, I completely agree. But as with every other route, including Winnequa Road, where we're accused of originally of we were going to deforest Winnequa Road and putting in a sidewalk. We took a total of 7 or 5, I think even less than 7, I think it was like 5.
You mean on McKenna
No, on Winnequa.
when you put in sidewalk?
Yeah.
We didn't take any trees out.
Oh, yeah, okay, right.
And we
Right.
took out very few trees because we were able to line the sidewalk
Okay,
around some of the larger trees, and so it was put in, So anyway, I'm not
Okay.
saying that we shouldn't worry about it, but if we feel like this is the best route. It's
No.
not our responsibility to worry about that piece of it. That's another committee, that's Public Works. And so. I'm just encouraging us not to get caught up in
Well,
that piece of it.
yeah, but I wouldn't just say lay it off on another committee. I mean, it's our bus route that is requiring a sidewalk for safety purposes, so Public Works isn't putting it in for no particular reason.
My guess is if this goes through, it's gonna be during the capital budget process will be the mayor's proposal to put it in, like she did
Right.
South Winnequa.
Oh, yeah, I understand that.
So then it would go back, Public Works as far as the
Right.
details and stuff like that, like it's approved.
But this is what's precipitated the sidewalk.
But it's not just this that's precipitating the sidewalk. Like I said, Winnequa Road is a high priority on the bike ped plan. It's like the highest priority, which is why. To continue the sidewalk on Winnequa Road beyond where it is now is one of the higher priorities. So it's just furthering that plan,
Okay,
perhaps faster than we would have, because it also will serve the bus if we decide to go. So are we? Given what we just heard about the old route and the challenges of turning by number 7 and also the stops that we just talked about. Are we comfortable with? I understand it's not the criteria, we're not making the decision as to whether this is a recommendation, we're just saying, this is the route. We would like to see the bus go, if we in fact do the bus. Do we feel like we're comfortable with the route that we're suggesting?
so the one-way route versus the two-way route,
I'm not going 2A yet, I'm just talking about the actual,
one-way route. For if we did one way, this is the route. we
It's the
follow.
same,
Yeah.
it's the same route either way.
right,
I'm still not, I agree that the turn onto Pheasant Hill is great. Yay. I think we've got good stops along that. Admittedly, I keep going back to going to the intersection or going past the grocery store. I'm still like not, I don't know. It's a hard decision.
I have that haunting me as well. And really, when you're out and about in Monona, where are the cars? That's where they are. You know, they're at Metro Market in that shopping area. And if you know, if the bus is an alternative to the car, it's not if that's where you're going.
Can you see this map I just put up? This kind of shows what it, here's this is the one route, it's the same thing, it just doesn't show the Stoughton Road. So it's the cops, the Fenwright, to Owens, the Pheasant Hill, Nichols and around. Shows all the way down here.
Oh, no, Mark, I think we're seeing something different than you're seeing. I'm seeing
Okay.
the map that you just had up.
Okay. Let's see if I can put that up. Is that all right? I put that one up, Nancy.
Mhm. Can you see it now?
Yep.
Yes, thank you.
So this is the one, the two-way route, but it's the same route. It's the Fenwright to Owen to Pheasant Hill. So
Mhm.
So if. I know one of the questions that I had was as it relates to the H route.
I can get that back on.
Now, you don't need to. That doesn't, forget it, that doesn't do as much good, because I was thinking the H route, you would at least be able to, if they stopped at the corner of Monona Drive and Broadway,
Mhm.
which would then allow people to go to Cops. And go to all the retail that's in that's on that corner.
You'd have to cross the street.
You'd have to cross the street, yes, but
Okay.
still,
Yeah. It's
if you were on the H, that would work, but that's not gonna take you from. You know, the middle of Monona to the grocery, so I guess it goes back to. Are we prioritizing where people live versus where people wanna go?
We have a little evidence of that from the transit survey.
Okay.
So we did ask a pair of questions that for me have been kind of grounding me in how I think about this.
Yeah.
You know, we ask people to say if and sorry, I just clicked away from it. So we asked people how more or less likely were you to ride the bus if X, Y, and Z? And so we asked people, how likely are you to ride the bus if the bus stop was closer to my home or business?
Yep.
And we ask, how much more or less likely would you be if the bus route went closer to my destination?
Yep.
Okay, and as I'm looking at the results of that,
Right.
I see that there's a small trend that people are more, or there's 48% of people said that they would be much more likely to ride the bus if the bus route went closer to my destination. And 40% said they would be more likely to ride the bus if the bus stop was closer to my home or business. So, you know, as I'm kind of trading that off, it's not a big difference, honestly, but it's a little bit more to me saying that people care a little bit more about the buses going to their destinations, and they're willing to walk a little bit from their home, maybe.
Okay.
I mean, it's a small amount. I don't know how much we want to weigh in on, you know, those 20 or so people, you know, that kind of responded to that differently, but That's helping me to think about it.
Okay, that's great to pull that out. Thank you.
It's not just Metro Market. There really are quite a few businesses and restaurants at the intersection of Broadway and Monona.
For sure, and that's why I was thinking if they could stop at least. We could figure out. How, if they could stop the H, right?
Right,
That's still, again, but H doesn't take you again from. Our city center. Down to
Right.
Broadway.
right.
And as to not muddy the waters too much, I'll hold it at that. Because I could definitely see the value of Femrite, but I can also see the value of Broadway. I mean, that's just the reality.
I'm glad to see Femrite, because it hasn't always been there, and also the high school.
Right. So. Should we leave the route for now, knowing that that's still a dangler?
Mhm.
Or do we want to continue to? Work on the actual route?
Let's leave the route for now.
Okay. So we're okay with the Owen, Pheasant Hill, Nichols, Dean, but we're still kind of struggling with the lack of service on Broadway. Okay, I got it.
I will say one positive is
Yeah.
that the L, if I remember correctly, goes to Woodman's East, which is really nice.
And
Yeah,
that's being remodeled.
yeah.
Yeah,
is.
it's crazy in there. But yeah, I mean, getting up to Woodman's on the L is really easy.
Right.
Ah,
Yeah. Indeed. Okay. So, so we know where we want the stops to be, just to confirm. Mark, can you go back to the other map? We decided that we would, with that route, as reconfigured, we decided that we would want the stop pretty close to Monona Drive, basically the number 5. We want to stop at St. Corner by St. Stephen's, where you turn north on to Pheasant Hill. We want to stop at where it turns left to go down Nichols, stop at the city center, and then those other stops are all the same. Okay. So should we go on to the criteria?
Sure. Did you guys want?
Anything else on the route? No, okay. So why don't we go to new business, which is the criteria for selection? I believe at the last meeting, we talked about. You talked about. That the survey. Provided some. Getting to the question, some basis for the criteria because it was based on. National research, why people choose transit, among other things, right? See, what was it? Access, Trying to get to the question. The one that says national, that said national research has shown people are.
Yeah, I've got it on page 26 and 27 of the transit packet that we had, the big fat one from last time or 2 times ago.
Yeah. Okay, yeah, so the national research reveals personal necessity, mobility, right,
Yep.
affordability, so
Get that up.
that's all right.
What's the heat map? So it's.
So it seems to me, I'm just gonna sketch it out thinking about this. But should we say that the criteria is access to home, one criteria would be access to home. Or another one would be access to the desk, or just one criteria would be access, improved access. Another criteria would be obviously affordability, sorry, you just had it up.
Sorry. Oh. it's good. You want the results one or just actual survey?
No, I was that particular question. Sorry.
And yeah, we need the results, I think.
Yeah.
Mark.
Yeah.
I'm a little confused, Nancy. Are you talking about the criteria for the route or the criteria for joining Madison Metro or?
I think what it was,
Pick between.
I'm following your lead, and I think what you want to do is establish the criteria. Or what we would call a strategy screen. In my biz, which is to set or filter, by which we would essentially take the Madison proposal. And feed it through that filter and take what we have now. The Mona Express and feed it through that filter. In other words, what are the criteria by which we're gonna make a decision
Right.
Between those two.
between those two? Right,
Eddie, what page were you looking at?
It's labeled on what I have as page 27, but it's out of 104 pages, so I don't think that's right. So I would say subtract like 18 off of it. Let's try page 12 or so.
and really. I think that helps us, but I don't think that really.
You got past it already, Mark, because we're already into the open comments.
Let's look at 26, she said.
Yeah, but I'm in a different document than you guys are at. So it's like
Yeah.
of the Survey Monkey, the publicly released Survey Monkey results, it's question 3,
Oh.
I think that we're looking at. Yeah.
Okay.
Right.
Excuse me,
So I
sorry,
think-
question 4.
Yeah, so I think out of those are helpful, but they're not necessarily. Criteria per se. I mean, affordability would affordability would certainly be in there for criteria. Ease of use
Mhm.
might be a second, sustainability would be another. And access, and I would say access meaning. Both in terms of timeliness.
You enlarge them.
Which is to say, and access in terms of. Whether it's, whether it's closer to home. Or to their destinations. Are the ones that I'm seeing, what are other people seeing and besides price? Or price for the city, for the municipality. Because that has to be
Other than what's in the survey you're asking?
Yeah.
Okay.
I would introduce some concept of, I don't know how to frame this, but how well are we serving everybody in Monona? Like an idea, almost not equity, I don't think is the right, but there's yeah, a concept like that. How are we doing at serving all of Monona? Does that, what would be,
Yes.
I don't know. Does that make sense?
Yeah,
Yeah.
totally.
Equity. Yeah.
Okay. So I have affordability for the riders. Sustainability, ease of use. Access in terms of expanded hours, the number of hours in a week.
Days-
How often,
days
how
and
often it
hours.
runs, how
Yeah.
often it runs. Access in terms of how close it is to people's homes or the places that they want to go. Equity, which is to say it's serving all of Monona. Or the interest in serving all of Monona, and then. And then obviously, one of the other criteria would be. The price to the municipality, the cost to the municipality. What else?
Impacts to neighbors. Or people who live near the route.
And what does that mean? I'm not following.
Well, I think people have complained about noise. And the intrusion that they feel by larger buses.
And bus stops.
And yeah,
How do we address that?
Okay,
It does, under your sustainability
yeah,
category, Nancy, does environmental kind of, the alignment of the Sustainable Monona Plan kind of outlines some
Right.
values for our communities, that falls under sustainability.
yeah,
I just see that because the result that sticks out to me on the table that Mark has pulled up is how many people find environmental impact to be of high importance.
yes. Absolutely.
Mhm. Nancy, you mentioned the plan commission and developers.
Let's see, so it'd be so that would be. Supportive economic development or something like that.
Yeah.
Or it,
Affordable housing, I know, we just had a meeting.
Right. And-
City
and-
Madison's mayor, and we were talking about Metro and we also were talking about affordable housing, and one of the things that when you try to go for affordable housing, there's big criteria is transportation,
yeah,
and that's it's a negative, so
Great.
if affordable housing is an issue
Mhm.
but,
to address.
okay, so we have impacts on those on the routes, like noise.
Does that fall under the blanket of safety? I mean, I'm trying to pick out because the folks that said like I don't want the route going by my house, like they illustrated some specific reasons why. Noise, pollution, which falls under sustainability, safety to people on the route, other users of the roadway, right? So is it falling under like safety is a thing that we're not capturing that they were telling us was one of the concerns about the bus going through?
I think we can put safety as another bit of the criteria. I mean, I guess what I would recommend is we put safety as another piece of the criteria because it's been a thread all the way along.
Mhm.
even if it's a perception, which it is, because.
Right.
Because, both companies have stellar safety records.
Yeah, and the more buses we have, the fewer drivers are on the roads.
Right, right. So are we missing anything though in terms of criteria then? Affordability for the riders, sustainability, ease of use, access in terms of expanded hours, access. Again, close, both in terms of where you get on and where you get off, expanded access.
Well, a big part of our discussion was serving local transit needs, which is why we were looking at the two-way loop.
That's right.
Right, so I guess that's, I don't know how. I think this goes back to my comment about not letting the perfect be the enemy of the goods. Because the reality is that the Mononan Express doesn't serve our local transit needs either. So I feel like we're asking Madison Metro to do something that our own bus service doesn't do.
Well, I mean, it could come down to which of the Madison Metro proposals do we want? Not necessarily just stacking it up against Monona Transit. But if local transit needs is a significant value, then I think we have to include it in the discussion.
That's what would really we would be adding.
Now, would the additional cost be what we be comfortable paying for that? Do we get enough bang for our buck if we had a 50% increase? I don't know, but I think what we're talking about is just sifting it through that screen that you were talking about.
Mhm.
How it comes out may or may not flush out, the two-way option is what we do, but I think it's important that we at least put it on the table and see how it lands, so that we can say when the decision is made, we thought about it and we gave it some due thought and we decided that we're going this way, but
Yeah, but I guess what I would
I-
say is that, what I would say is that as much as I appreciate the two-way would be better in some respects in terms of serving local needs. It's a whole lot worse in terms of others, because it means instead of 16 buses a day, you're doubling the number of buses.
yeah, exactly. So I mean,
I also am.
And the price.
I'm very concerned that from the beginning of this conversation, one of the guiding principles that we have been holding since Metro approached us was
Right.
that we can do this at or slightly above the cost of our current transit expenditures,
Right,
right? And that we have never in any of our conversations, in any of our information sessions we said in our information session with the public that this would cost about the exact same.
right,
Right. And so I'm really concerned that because we started the beginning of this process with that assumption that we're
Right.
not going to be going to the council and asking for a huge budget increase, that to
right,
now come to the council and say, and we want another $250,000 or how much ever it would be to run this double route for amazing access to Monona bus systems. It seems really misleading to the public. It feels really uncomfortable to me to be going back
Yeah.
on that kind of thing, because that was
Yeah.
really at the beginning of it, the reason why we could even that Metro was even able to approach us, right?
right,
Is by saying like, we can do this at the same cost. And now we're
Right.
like, let's recommend this.
Right.
It makes me really uncomfortable.
right,
I think we need to explore it. I think we learned something. I mean, that's why, because we learned something. When you look at, if I'm gonna take this bus to do, inside Monona, and it's gonna take me an hour each way, I'm not ever gonna do it. So would we really recommend moving to a system like that?
So maybe instead what we end up recommending, I'm just saying, I mean, this is just thinking outside of the box. I wasn't gonna bring it up, but I'll bring it up anyway. I'm sure you guys have heard the same thing. You know, maybe what we're talking about is that this serves again as part of a regional transit system that gets people outside of Monona.
That's right. That's a different thing.
That gets people outside of them, that we're not looking to this service to serve the local needs. Which isn't to say that it isn't gonna serve some local needs, but it's not intended to serve all of our local needs. And that if we need something to serve local needs, there's certainly have been people that have recommending that Monona have its own little trolley. I just spent 5 days up in Door County. So I'm a little biased at the moment, but as I was driving around Door County all weekend, I was watching the trolleys. That drive around, and they're underwritten by businesses, and the little trolleys take people around. That's different than the buses that go around Door County that are part of a larger transit system. So maybe we don't depend on this to serve local need, that the goal is not to just get people from stop 6 to. I mean, you could go from stop 6 to the high school. You could certainly do some local, but maybe the ultimate goal of this is not. Serving local is not as high. I mean, or it's just got a rate lower. To Addie's point, it would just on that particular criteria, again, and I just added another, potentially another one, which is the reliability piece. Right? Which is something we've been struggling with. As another bit of criteria. So if the one-way service serving local transit needs ends up being lower ranking for Madison Metro than the Monona Express is, then so be it. I mean, the whole idea is to put both proposals.
I don't think it would be lower, but it certainly wouldn't be a lot better. And I think from the beginning, like Addie said, we've been with the mindset that it would be a significant improvement in local transit. Not just commuter.
Yeah. But that's one bit of criteria of this whole list,
Right,
right?
right.
Is there anything else in terms of the criteria? Are we missing anything?
Did we mention the number of the through traffic issue and how each of those have different numbers going through the neighborhood on a daily basis?
Through traffic and
Through traffic. How many buses a day come through?
That'd be. Oh, so you're saying like
Yeah, I mean,
16 times a day or something?
versus 32, right?
What's your,
what would be,
So I mean, we're saying that 32 is not good because that's twice what we've been telling people. So that kind of thing should be a criteria.
I think that sort of fits under some of the other ones, like the quality
Yeah.
of life ones, where with the people's concerns about the noise and
Okay.
size of the buses.
right,
Okay.
yeah, it fits under impact on the road and the other ones.
Yeah, you can combine that.
All right, so what I'm gonna suggest is. Potentially since we. Only said tonight that we were establishing the criteria. We didn't say that we were using the criteria. I think it's important that we stop there and perhaps, if I could just lean on you a little bit more, Addie. Could maybe you and I work on putting together spreadsheet or rubric around these? For,
Yeah. Yeah, I admittedly I'm already kind of scribbling one on my notes here for myself to use. So yes, absolutely, Nancy, let me know.
okay,
And you're thinking this would be more like a form that we individually fill out and then kind of
Yeah.
compare our answers?
yeah.
Okay. Good. Yeah, absolutely. I think that's great. A worksheet. That's what we need. A worksheet.
Right, a worksheet, and then if, you know, at the end of the day, if we. As an example, if we decide that serving local transit needs, we can't live with. What's there for either service, you know, then I think we can talk about whether or not we want to recommend something else. But I think we need to. Weigh what's in front of us now before we leap to, we need to create something totally new.
So not consider the two-way service at this point,
Not at this point, no.
because you want to see how this pans out first.
Well, yes, I do want to see how it pans out first, but I also, to Addie's point, we've said from the very beginning to the community and to the mayor that we're not going to spend any more money on transit. So that would be a wholly different thing than what we've been working with for more than a year.
Okay, I mean, I'm only following through with what other people on the commission have brought up as an issue.
I know.
I'm not arguing for or against it.
I know,
I'm
and
just
I'm just
saying
saying
that
it's
this
not that we
was
won't raise it, but I
The
think
whole
we should.
reason that we had the fellow from Metro come was because of the local transit issues.
Exactly,
So that was just something we spent a lot of time talking about. And
Right.
I really like the idea of documenting that we considered it. And we may decide to exit out, but at least when we go to the public, we can say we considered that. And here's why we decided not to do it. Rather than not considering it because it doesn't fit with what we've been telling people.
I'm not saying that we won't consider it, I'm suggesting we consider it after we consider what the proposals that are in front of us. As opposed to before,
Yeah,
because
In our
that's the
start-
proposal.
Here's as
I'm not very comfortable with that, I guess.
well, so purely as an academic exercise, when I'm working with people and asking them to compare against a lot of things,
Right,
one thing that I think is really grounding and helping is to pick when we have an extreme, or is to pick the extremes and the middles and have people decide all across the spectrum. So in fact, I mean, this is going to sound absolutely radical, but this is just an academic exercise.
right.
What if on our comparison, we also include no transit in Monona? As in, we don't do the express, we don't do Madison Metro, we don't do the lift, we don't do anything.
Yeah. I
As
bet
an
you get some
academic
votes for that.
exercise, right?
Right.
So we would have we do nothing, the status quo,
Mhm.
the Madison Metro proposal, and then our kind of best ideal transit for Monona proposal, and compare across the four of them.
Right,
Yeah, I think that makes sense because it puts the possible benefits in sharper relief.
Yeah,
yeah, sure,
yeah, I like that,
Yeah.
Addie. Mhm.
yeah,
Yeah, I like it too. I think I'm used to, like, when you do a NEPA analysis, you have 3 or 4 alternatives and you rank them all against each other. And that's how you come up with your favorite alternative.
right. So
But-
again, I'm not suggesting. I did listen to the meeting last, I'm very respectful of what the commission talked about last time, but I'm saying we have over a year now of the commission also talking. About this proposal. And
Right.
Monona Express, so I'm just suggesting we go there first and then
Not do
if
it.
we feel like. None of it's livable and we've got to go in a different direction, we can then say, okay, then. We really feel like we can't make a recommendation unless it goes two-way. That we've decided that's too important.
Well, I guess I would do it differently,
Mhm.
but I'm not gonna continue to repeat myself, but
Doesn't
feel
that
like-
slow our process, Nancy, if I mean, why not just find out? the
I'm
real
not
issue?
saying that Addie can't add it to the. I'm not saying that Addie can't add it to or that Addie and I can't add it to the worksheet. We can add it to the worksheet. I have no problem adding it to the worksheet. I just don't want to skip over the one way as if we
No, no,
thrown
no,
that out, as if we've thrown out the one way.
No,
no,
no one's throwing anything out.
not at all,
Okay.
no. But
Because
to
that
add
would
it, I
be
think
more
we'd
of
have,
the criteria, all the other criteria to say, well, because this clearly doesn't meet our local transit needs, we're gonna, we're gonna recommend something different when that's only one piece of the criteria that we have in front of us. So Jillian, I have a question for you. Did you watch last month's meeting?
I did not.
Okay. Because one of the things that, because this relates to since you have it's been a particular issue for you. Let me find it. You, as somebody who rides the bus, I know one of the things that you have talked about all along is that we could shoot ourselves in the foot by having the route take so much longer to get downtown.
Mhm.
Or to the areas that people are used to, that we might pick up some people, but we lose people.
Yeah,
And so, and he was really good at articulating. What he thought the exact time was gonna be, so like, for instance, he said. Monona Drive, the corner of Monona Drive and Dean, he thought it would be 25 minutes to the square.
oh, yeah, I looked at the minutes though. So I
Okay.
saw that, yeah.
Okay, and then Broadway, Femrite, he said it would be 35 minutes to the square, and then Broadway and Cops, he said 40 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
And then he said it would be 19 minutes from Dempsey to downtown.
Okay.
So how does that compare to,
Right now it's about 15 minutes from Dean to the square. Because there are no stops really between, or only a few.
right,
Yeah, I'm just so skeptical because I used to ride the 38 and sometimes every single stop someone gets on or off, whereas on the express there are scheduled stops. I mean, it's
Right.
not it's not like a deal breaker because there are things that outweigh that concern. Like some of the people will have a longer commute, but everyone who's at UW
yeah,
would then have a subsidized bus pass, which they don't with Monona Express. So
right.
there are trade-offs, but it's good to hear that they have a precise estimate.
So is that a criteria, travel time to downtown?
It is for me because I just talking to the people on the bus, I know for some people, the combination of the time it takes, which will be more on the return. Well, it could be more on the return trip than the morning trip. The time it takes plus the fact that it'll only run every hour. Is a concern. That one of the worst things about the Monona Express to me is that it only runs every 45 minutes. So if you miss one, you've got to wait 45 minutes. But yeah, it's just hard to quantify how much of a deal breaker that is for the existing riders. And even if it's a deal breaker for the existing riders, is the fact that it runs more frequently during the day going to mean that they're going to be more riders?
Right,
So
Well,
so travel time, should we say travel time to downtown? Just sort of generically, or travel
yeah,
time?
generically, I mean, because everyone has to go through there are a lot of people on campus, I'd say, but it's maybe a third of the way split between downtown campus and the hospitals.
Does that fall under access, proximity of stops and routes? Is there like just another criteria there, speed or,
Yeah, I think maybe access could encompass not just like how easy it is to use based on proximity, but how easy it is based on frequency.
yeah,
if it's so infrequent that you can't make it to work on time, then you don't have access.
Maybe instead of 2 accesses, 1 is frequency.
I think timeliness, a lot of people are. I've heard that comment in some of the public meetings is that. They weren't gonna take Metro if it took that much longer. They were gonna drive their car instead, so. I think it is. A decisive factor for a lot of people.
So. All right, well, we'll work on it. So but I think what we're saying is. To Addie's question, is access as in close to home and destinations, is that the same as travel time or is that whole separate?
I think it's separate.
Yeah, it could be
Could be-
separate.
Separate. Okay, so we have frequency / timeliness,
Mhm.
and then we have access as it relates to. Or which meaning access as defined as sort of close to your home. Or your most frequented destinations, right? That's quite a hefty list. It's gonna be a fun worksheet.
Will this also work for comparing the Monona lift or to the paratransit?
That was kind of why I brought up that equity issue,
Yeah,
because that to me falls under, because we could identify certain groups of people that we wanted to make sure we were explicitly addressing equity for.
but
I would think that renters, seniors,
People with disabilities.
disabilities. Yes, thank you.
yeah,
Sounds like the criteria should work.
yeah, I think the criteria. Can work, it could be another column. Okay. We don't have any other criteria. Is there anything, well, first of all, as Addie and I are working on the worksheet between now and next month, or between, to get it out to people, or to look at next month. If you think of anything else that you feel like we've omitted, as always, feel free to let us know.
Nancy, do you have an idea of our time frame of when we're expected to get something to the council?
So we've just learned, last month through Metro that the earliest that they could do anything now is March of 24.
Mhm.
But in terms of Monona's budgeting process, we really need to know in time, I think, for our budgeting process. And so we typically, that means that we would have to know by the end of the summer, because we'd be looking at operating, our operating budgets are being developed right now. And so any changes to the operating budget, we would, we're usually doing a committee of the whole in September, October.
Yeah,
So we need a whole for operating, we usually do capital first. Right, and then we do the operating budget, and so that's like the outside worst case scenario, or the last possible thing would be October.
Yeah.
But we should really have it done before then. We should really have it just, they should make before then.
But in terms of a budget, aren't they pretty close? I mean, we could put in placeholder enough for Monona Transit, but if we
Yeah.
go with Metro, it would be less, so.
yeah, I mean, if you stay with what's proposed on both sides, it's gonna be fairly close. Dollar wise, yeah.
So it seems like we could have a budget amount that could cover either option.
We would start out with something, but
Yeah.
we still want to prove that. I think you still want to prove that your budget
To know which option we're choosing.
Yeah,
Yeah. I think we
Yeah.
want to make a decision and if we decided we wanted to propose more two-way,
Oh,
then we would need to know that.
that
too.
we need to, yes.
That's the whole thing. We can't.
right.
And I think when we have,
So-
should we have a decent idea where we're at after next meeting?
Yeah.
When we do go through everything.
Yeah,
So,
so,
then it'll go to council for 2 reads,
oh, okay,
at least 2, I mean, the minimum 2 reads.
okay, so if we pick an option. This next month or the month after,
Then it would go to council.
then it would go to council.
Yeah,
So it'd be this coming meeting or the meeting after that we'd come up with an option.
yes,
So we're getting close.
yes.
Okay.
And Mark, once we've picked an option, what do we need to formally do to report that to the council as a recommendation? Is there a document drafting back and
Yeah, I
forthing
would
process
have
there, or
that.
do we just say it?
I'll have a document for the next meeting, actually, from Metro and per student. We can see the comparables too. Then we just make a recommendation and we'll bring that to the council.
It's not a lengthy, it'll be a 1-page, you know, it's not,
Okay.
it's not a
Good,
white
good.
paper, it's just a 1-page of the, after much
Yeah,
thoughtful deliberation and research and connection with our community, we make the following recommendation to the city council.
And how do we announce this to the public?
to the public. It would be on the first read for the agenda for the council. That's where.
Mine, it'll be on mine and on the newsletter. We
Yeah,
could certainly do a PSA,
we can do some stuff like that.
you know, and WV.
All right.
Sorry to interrupt. Are we going to be discussing the last agenda item? I'm just wondering because I have to do bedtime soon and
Thank you so much.
All right.
Is there any
DEI stuff.
DIB related, so I will tell you that once again. I can tell you under this item that, that the implementation, the DEIB implementation group, ad hoc committee that was formed, appointed by the mayor. To review the DEIB report that was completed about a year ago. And prioritize that report. Decided that the top 3 priority for the city, actually the number 1 priority for the city. Is addressing both housing, affordable housing and transit.
okay.
Probably not a surprise, to those of us, to many people. And we're doing both. We're making progress on both fronts. Obviously, we're making progress with transit and we're making progress with. And with affordable housing as well. So, and then. Trying to think what the second one was.
One of the city operations was just like the city websites.
Right. And then the third, I forget, and the third one was a potential cultural. Committee / cultural arts. Emphasis for the city. So again, this is a top priority. There's a reason why we spend so many hours on it. And I think that's, I think that's all I had to report there. Does anybody else have anything else to report as it relates to the DIB? Do you have anything to report?
No,
Okay,
that was.
anything else for tonight? Jillian, have fun putting child to bed.
Sorry.
You sing your child to bed?
Yeah.
I
I love bath time. I can't miss it for the world, so.
Okay, all right, we'll go and have fun with it. Thanks so much, everybody.
Move to end the meeting.
Yeah, do I have a
Aye.
motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
I second.
Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All right, thanks again, everybody. You're the best.
NEPA stands for National Environmental